Actually, that's not fun. This is the Invention, Bach Invention number 13 in A minor. It's a dance piece. First and foremost, this is a piece about vitality and dance and the even distribution for the arms. When you play this piece, I actually feel like a runner with arms pumping. And I'm going to show you exactly all the places in the piece where that happens. But first of all, let me start by saying that the way Bach wrote this invention, and invention means being inventive with ideas, is quite inventive. It's unusual. When I went to start marking up my copy, which is highly marked up, I was perplexed about it. I have these red boxes around the opening material that repeats between right hand and left hand, and it sounded like this. And I said to myself, you know, that's not all that interesting and compelling of a subject. And Bach thought that too, and in fact that is not the full subject. That's a series of imitations built on basically this chord and this chord. And this is an A minor second inversion. And this is really the implied 5/7 chord, which is in the left hand. However, that provides the nucleus of a lot of what Bach is then going to play with in this piece. The use of inversions, going up the scale, up the keyboard, and down the keyboard, and the trading off of hands and the crossing of parts is a lot of what it's about. So if we take the first two measures and I play the right hand alone, this is what we have. Now that sounds more like a subject, don't you think? And in fact, I call this a theme phrase because it takes the two full measures and it's not an exact repeat. If we take the left hand, listen how that sounds. It's not exactly the same. So what we do get though from looking at the right hand theme phrase, three things I wanted to tell you how he's using. One is the use of inversions. The second is that little end of right here. That up a third and down a step, believe it or not, is a motive that he's going to use many times in the piece, and I've got them all circled here. The last motive he uses for page 1 is the sixth. So I'll point those out too. Now this piece is in binary form. Page 1, your A section, page 2, your B section. And this chart, which I made and I adore, and I highly recommend that you use, you can get it from my website, sallychristianmusic.com, beautifully puts the piece on 2 pages. This is my working copy. I can actually fold it in half like this, because I've had it printed on slightly smaller form. You don't have to print these on the 11 by 17 necessarily. Sometimes they can be, this is more like a 14 width, and it fits nicely in a briefcase and kind of a portable copy once you've learned it. The notes are a little smaller, but I really like this size for myself also. And now going on here, we have our A section, and then when I get to the B section, page 2, we're going to have really a lot of new things that don't come from the subject phrase and are really quite inventive. Really, he really went out of the box on this one. Okay, so we have our opening material in A minor, 2 measures. And then we go on to our first sequence, which is developmental material. Let me take the right hand alone, starting in measure 3. And this is what it sounds like. Descending 16th notes. There's your little first motive. And then up by and climbing down. So that sequence repeated twice, the same idea. And then mid-line, we have this motive. The sixth, another sixth, another sixth. So we basically have 3 descending sixths. And you can tell where it's going. Of course, C major, the relative major. Let's look at the left hand starting measure 3. Isn't that fun? It's just so buoyant. There's a little 3-note motive. Now, one of the things I like to do is to play the 16th notes alone from right hand to left hand. Like that. And you can do the same with the other parts. That's beautiful. So you have 2 choices. And this is the really fabulous thing about these inventions. Bach wrote them to be study tools for his children and other students to learn how to articulate many voices at once. Now, what I mean by that, in a singer, it would be good diction, pronunciation clearly. And in playing the piano, we want to have a definite difference between all the voices. In this case, only 2 voices, because it's a 2-part invention. So our touch is important, and the dynamic level. Playing the piano, we can make mezzo piano and mezzo forte. Now, I don't think Bach would have any objection to that. I think he would be thrilled, would have been thrilled, to have the modern day piano. And that includes using pedal too. But that's another subject for another piece. So, let me put the hands together on line 2. And see if you can hear the division. This is... repetition of the theme phrase in the relative major, C major, using inverted counterpoint, and all that means is instead of the right hand starting and the left answering, now the left hand begins and the right answers. So that sounds like this in measure 6.5. And I am going to share with you another big benefit of the chart. And it's called the satellite view. Now this is really a huge tool for study, and I've marked mine a little bit here, but this is what you get along with your chart. And I'm mentioning it here because you get to see how I have divided the piece up into the sections. We are right here now in the C major section, the same material as the opening. And then we're going to have more developmental material that gets really exciting over here. But before we get there, notice 2 measures for system 1, 3.5 measures for system 2. So what I did is actually to have an open-ended measure with just the first 2 beats here and the second 2 beats here. Why did I do that? And the answer is because the new material that starts here begins on the 3rd beat. And it's hard to see that sometimes. But this way, it's very clear. Now, if I want to start my C major section, I don't have to hunt mid-measure. I can just start right there. Same thing happens later in the piece over here when we get to our final wrap-up phrase. Again, starts on the 3rd beat. So that's a pretty wonderful feature about the charts, and also being able to get your overview of the entire piece. Okay, let's go on. The C major section, measure 6.5. There's that. Okay, now it gets really dense. And having worked on this piece for quite some time and taught it for years, I will tell you right now what we're coming to with our last system on page 1, which wraps up the A section, 5 measures in total, is difficult. And I purposely put a line here of 5 measures because it's all one unit. But when you practice it, you can actually break it into 2.5 and 2.5. Let's go slowly and take a look at the right hand starting in measure 9 on the high C. Measure 10 has a B. Measure 11, these are downbeat notes. Okay, that's the first 2.5 measures. And then on an offbeat, I get a G, and then a F sharp, E, and then D sharp, E. Why am I playing this? And the answer is because that is the melodic outline of E harmonic minor. And that's the key that we're going to. E, there's our harmonic minor scale with a D sharp. And he is modulating for our second half of the piece. Our B section starts on E minor. So let me play this right hand alone now and listen for this descending outline. It's a very clever way of modulating. Very disguised. I love that ninth. Do you hear the rocking on this? Let yourself go on this. Give yourself permission to swing with it. I mean, this music is happening. Let's take a look at the left hand on measure 9. It goes up and down. There's our still there. Now for the first time we have an expanded 16th note passage. It's really accompanimental and it's difficult. Slowly. Ending with an E minor arpeggio. Okay, now another thing that I will show now is how I practice this. I actually put colored pencil. For my 8th notes I put blue lines, and it's nice to hear this construction. So here that's a sequence. That's kind of funny, doesn't it? Quite clashing. The 16th notes I put in green, and this is tricky. That's all one line. Isn't that beautiful? How did Bach think to do that? Such a long cascading line. Next measure down a step. And an incomplete, a partial. Remember it's 2.5 measures? Here's the other 2.5. Now we get to this marvelous part. The next 4 measures beginning in measure 14. I'll tell you a little anecdote that's pretty interesting. This piece was written in 1723 for its final version. In the 1721 version, 2 years earlier, the page 1 that we just finished is identical, but page 2, where we're starting, didn't exist. He added these next 4 measures that we're going to do right now in the later version. And they are really daring. I'm just amazed at what he's done here. Okay, hang on now. This gets really dense. We continue with our descending 16th note patterns that we started on the previous line. Listen to that. Oh, so clashing. It's a diminished at the top. sequence again. Another sequence. In my music, you don't have these in yours because this is my working copy, but sequence, 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 sequence. The whole thing is built on sequences, which are passages that repeat the same melodic idea down a step, down a step. They're always modulatory, they're always bringing us to a new key. But Bach's sequences are not predictable, and this one in particular is loaded. Okay, next measure. Same, down a step. Now it gets really and the final. The left hand. Diminished 7 chord. C sharp, diminished, and then B diminished. So that went down a whole step. From here, I mean, that sounds like 20th century. Hang on, it gets better. That's not a 5/7 chord at all, or diminished. And it's not even spelled like one. It's really out there. It's an A minor with an added 6th. So that doesn't belong at all with our pattern of diminished 5/7 chords coming down. And then our final measure to wrap it up here, that's our G sharp minor, diminished, G sharp diminished. So if I took those chords, blocked, see how unusual that is? Okay, we get ready for the third and final ingredient of this beautiful 4-measure line, and it's what I call the tag. It's the end of the measure, and it's a 5-finger pattern shared between the first note with the right hand and the next 4 with the left. Very interesting. So slowly, here it is. There it is, right in the middle, A, D minor. Next measure. C. Going on. B major, but we know it doesn't have anything to do with B major. And the final one, it could have been. That's leading to the recapitulation. But before we do that, let me play this as written now and listen for that 5-finger pattern link. Okay, now what was so neat about this recapitulation I just finished with, it's only 1 measure long. It is a shortened theme phrase instead of our opening 2 measures. We only have, and it goes right off like the wind now. And we have a series, another sequence, 3.5 measures long, that alternates between A minor, E major, A minor, and E major. He's playing around with the ultimate cadence on A minor. Listen to the right hand, but it's not so straight as that. You know, we had that before. That pattern Bach started with that wonderful 4-measure beginning of page 2. He's using it again here with measure 19. Okay, now the tag I talked about at the first system here with the 5-finger pattern, he uses a different kind of a tag here with this second to the last sequence, and it's a 4-note descending. That's beautiful. So here it is, right hand alone. Bring it out. Up a 10th. Okay, let's see what the left hand does here. A minor. Another one of those diminished 5/7 chords that came from this first sequence on page 2. So he's got a lot of cross references here with this line and this line. Very much integrated there, and has nothing to do with this page as far as material goes. So I'm going to play hands together now. Actually, I'm going to take the left hand alone. This is great! Isn't that fun? Going to the E major tonality. A minor. Don't you just love those sudden? That's a raised fourth actually. That's going 4, 5, 1. So he's giving little clues that we're about over here, but not without giving us some extraordinarily wonderful, condensed, tension-filled material for the final close. Hands together, measure 19. Isn't that beautiful? Parallel, and then contrary motion. You can play very slowly. Bach is one of the only composers that I've ever seen that you can slow it down to a quarter of the tempo and get a completely valid piece. It's really amazing, and that is proof when you hear some of the different recordings with Glenn Gould playing at half the tempo of some of the other well-known recordings we have. And they're all valid. So you can practice them, and please practice slowly. When you put these in your ears slowly and in your hands, you can't rely on reflex rote memory, which is such a temptation for pianists. We love to play fast, especially kids. I couldn't, you had to slow me down. Some of my students would practically have to, please slow down. It's so much fun to play fast. But then you're going to get in the danger of just letting your fingers go and your mind doesn't know really what you're doing. So slow practice. All right, so starting at measure 19, with the hands together, they start going parallel. And then they quickly diverge. Now, guess what? It gets one more repeat of our opening theme phrase. And that's it. Just snuck it in there one last time, but he keeps going, building up stepwise. Now listen to this fabulous, this is our Coda, how he builds this coiled up tension with this struggle. Now here we go. Remember those wonderful sixths? This is the only reference really on this whole second B section to our opening sixths that we had. And here I'm glad he got that in. Here it is. Well, that's a great bass line. I think I'm going to give that to my husband so he can play it on his upright bass. That's actually where a lot of our great material comes from. And if you listen to the bass lines of Bach, you will hear so many things in jazz, just as a little aside there. So I'm going to put the hands together here. This last line of the piece is the Coda, and I think it is a stretto, because it's compacted and compressed, and there's so much activity happening in every single eighth note here. Listen to how this sounds. We know we're going to get 4, 5, 1. He's already told us with the previous line, but how can he delay it and build in that extra bit of surprise and tension and beauty? Here it is, hands together, with our theme. Contrary motion. single A in the left hand and in the right hand. That's not uncommon for Bach to end that way. So simple with just the tonic in each hand. So that is your A minor invention, and this is actually one of the, it's almost like an etude piece, because to really play this fluidly all the way through is advanced. This is difficult. So stay with it. It's going to take you however long it takes you, and your patience and your vision of a compelling and achievable future for yourself with correct practice and analysis and intelligent practice will get you there. So just stay with it and you will have this finished product which will so enrich your life. Thank you and happy practicing with your A minor invention.